So what's changed for me is a desire to bring us together and to articulate clearly what this thing is that I've been developing, and which you have all been touched by in some way, either through being at an event and a retreat, experiencing the deep awake state with me, or through books or videos or connection, is to say, okay, look, we need to give this a name and an identity. And the reason for that is that then things exist, things which are formed and have a particularity. And because I'm very expansive, and because this, and because I'm also really not wanting things to become remotely cultish or anything like that, I've always held back from that. Oh, the world's got enough isms, it's like the last thing you need. But the fact is, if you do that, it's how things take shape. And taking shape is the only way something can come in and actually affect the world. And my own perception is that we desperately need a new, a transformative, new understanding of what reality is. And I think it's coming. I'm an optimist, so there's something about the deep awake state which makes me profoundly optimistic, even in the face of all of the things that there are to be unoptimistic about. And my feeling is it is coming. And, when I gave my TED talk recently, which will be online, edited up soon, and obviously I'll send that out to everyone. And I ended it with this kind of bold claim, really, which once I articulated it, felt completely right, which was that idea that there is a new understanding of the way that we perceive and experience reality that's coming. It's not here. This isn't it, but this is moving towards it. And that when it comes, I think it will be as big a bigger shift for human culture as the rising of science was 400 years ago. And in my mind, I was imagining what it would be like to be someone 400 years ago and see this, to see us now connecting across the world on the internet and on a computer, and just unthinkable for those first people that thought in a new way, that grew up through a culture which said the world was a certain way, and then went, I don't think it is, and just woke up. They woke up out of their conditioning. They tasted a bigger mystery, and they were willing to see things in a new way, and they changed everything. And here we are 400 years later, whatever it is, whenever you want to put that time, but here we are not that long later, and we can do this, and we've been to the moon, and we can look at everything. Unthinkable. And my feeling is that that's what's coming again. Of course it is. Of course it is. It hasn't ended. And there's a tendency to think of the future as just more of the past. So what's going to be? It'll be faster internet, or more technology. And that will, of course, happen. But the big shift won't be that. The big shift will be something which people aren't looking at. And my own hunch is that the big shift is an understanding not of how to do things and how things work, but what this is. A much deeper question, a reevaluation of what this is we are in. And in particular, a returning to some very ancient ideas, such as the idea of the soul, of the immortality of the soul, of life having a story, being dreamlike, ideas which we seemed forced to leave behind by science. But I think what is going to happen is we will come back to those ideas in a new way, and importantly, in a rational way. And one of the things I say in Soul Story is, I think what's happened is that science has come along and freed us from irrational religion, which we've grown out of. But then we've got stuck in this kind of very soulless vision, a reductionist vision of what reality is. But what it's done is it's cleared the way. It's cleared away irrational religion, pre-rational, let me say, religion, replaced it with rational science, but it's cleared the way now for a rational spirituality. And that's very much what I see us gathering to do. And when I say rational, I don't mean just heady and all of that stuff that people often feel uncomfortable around the word. I just mean a good reason. Things that are done for a good reason. And things are done for a good reason if you question them. If you question them and they have a good reason, you can follow it. If you question them and you think that's not a good reason, then you let it go. So it's about engaging that quality of being able to ask deep questions and come up with deep answers. So where that's taken me is wanting to bring together this, the philosophy and practices that I've been exploring with many of you in person, and hope I'll get the chance with other of you that I haven't done it in person with, and given a name. And the name I've chosen is Unividualism, as you probably all know by now, hence the idea of the ICU, the International Community of Unividuals. And that came really from the idea of unividuating, which is in Soul Story, and the idea that came from that of a unividual. And I really fell in love with that new term. As you know, I like new terms only because I think they help us think in new ways. When there isn't a term, you need, make one up, and if it's good, it'll stick, and if it's not, it'll just die and you move on. But unividuals, I've been touring the States, I've mentioned unividuals a lot, and I've been I really like the response. There's obviously a handful of people who are going to go, no, I don't like this weird word, new word. But an awful lot of people have gone, oh, thank you, I'll use that. That's great. And of course I've gone, yes, please do. Because what it captures is this new type of human being that's arising. And you wouldn't be here if that didn't apply to you. Which is an individual who is profoundly conscious of unity. Now, I think that is happening anyway. It's not just the handful of people that are involved are here. This is a widespread phenomena in ways we don't even notice. And the example that you may have heard me use in the videos I've done recently, in which I've been sharing in America, is there has been an historically unprecedented expansion of compassion. We live in a world where everyone thinks everything's going wrong. And the fact is, most things have never been so good. Now, there's also a lot of things which are going wrong and which are disastrous, and a lot of suffering and things which are horrendous. And it's definitely not just getting better. Like there's glitches and there's things which go badly. And right now we seem to be in a bit of a wobbly phase for sure, and so on. But taking a longer historical perspective, you can see see lots of things, but one of the things I want to focus on right now is the massive expansion of compassion. In which people care about other human beings in completely other parts of the world. And that's just never happened before. People didn't know about those human beings, of course, but also if they did know, they wouldn't have cared. They hated their neighbors. Most human beings have lived in a culture where they've been at war with their neighbors. And we now live in a culture where a huge number of people care that people are starving in another country, or there's a war, or there's injustice, or sections of the population because they're women or they're gay or oppressed. We care. Why? Why should we care? And I think in any other culture that would have been, well, there is no reason to. But what's happened is that we have changed. And this is a huge jump. And it needs a name. And not just with human beings, but with nature. I mean, we take it for granted. But most human beings, have seen nature as something to eat and to avoid being eaten by. And yet we care. So, when you hear that the polar bears are dying, or the tigers, these are animals which, if you were face to face with them, they would rip you to shreds without a moment's hesitation. But we care. We don't want them to, our ancestors have done their best to get rid of them, and we now want to save them. And with good reason. I'm really proud of us. Interspecies compassion. Wow, that's a new thing. So we're changing. And then behind all of that, smaller, but significant, because I've seen it in my own lifetime, there is a growth of people who've either had the profound experience or have the profound intuition, or both, that really the universe is all one. And that although we're all individuals, we are also ultimately all the same thing, that we're meeting here as separate expressions of one essence. There's one of us. And that's, of course, the great mystical insight which has fascinated me and I've written all of my books on. And that feeling of oneness issues into this compassion, into this love, into this universal big love. So something's happening. And what the word unividual does is it takes it away from just the idea of awakening in a spiritual context, which is fine. I got nothing against that. But I think we want something bigger. We want something we want a new form of spirituality. And one of the aspects of it, it needs to be bigger than just waking up, which has that connotation of getting away from this. Waking up from the illusion of Maya, waking up from the illusion of self, waking up from your ego, all of those things. What Unividual does is it says, no, let's think about that differently now. Let's think about that you don't wake up from it, you're waking up as it. You're waking up into it. And that you're not getting away from your individuality, because the individuality isn't the problem. In fact, your individuality is the foundation from which you become a unividual. So the way to become a unividual is to become more of an individual. Really go for being an individual. Don't get rid of your individuality. Celebrate it. Really make yourself you. Be completely you-ness, because there's no one else like you. Like, the great line, of course, from Wilde, be yourself, everyone else is taken. It's like, yeah, too right. And we're all different, and we're all a bit strange, and we're all mixed, and good bits and bad. That's the way we are. So this is a way of approaching awakening, which goes, let's not have a spirituality which is anti-life, anti the senses, anti the body, anti-pleasure, anti-women, everything that makes us human, anti-emotion, anti-attachments, anti-enough. Let's keep the essence, which is the reality of waking up to oneness, which is this enormous love. And as you know, if you get into the deep awake state, is life transforming. But let's see that as happening through the individual. So what we have here is a new idea of what spirituality is, which is growing. It's obviously not just me saying this, it's growing. And we have something which is about us. It's about it reaching in. It's about something collective. So we've just been through this incredible age of individualism, which is why we're so individual. Fantastic, isn't it? I mean, you look back at the old films and it blows me away, because I look at old films of, I don't know, a football match or people going to work in the UK, all those black and white films, and everyone's wearing the same clothes. Completely, it's like, and it's all like everyone knows who they are, because you can tell. Oh, he's wearing that hat. He's got a cloth cap on. He's worker. Great. Oh, he's got a bowler hat on. Oh, he's middle class. Oh, he's got a top hat on. Oh, he's ruling class. Everyone's got their place, and they're all going to wear their thing. That's all gone completely, hasn't it? All of it's gone. We've individuated to such an extent. Hurrah! We're thinking for ourselves, and that's all of a process of this thing where we all come in through a culture. That's true of every one of us and everyone throughout history. We grow up in a culture, and part of what happens then is our soul takes on all the ideas around us. And that becomes the ideas we have to think with. Whatever they happen to be, whatever you're told, your parents, your school, your culture, the books you read, that's it. Now, some people, and all of you will be this, otherwise you wouldn't be here, actually carry on that process, because the next step in that process is questioning that. And if you're lucky enough to profoundly wake up to the mystery, to have an awakening experience, what happened to me when I was 12, you find yourself, you're out, and suddenly you just see, oh my God, that's all historically arbitrary. The whole thing. I think all my beliefs, everything I think reality is just a set of historical ideas that happen to be because of when I was born. And at that moment, you can start a process of going, okay, so what of that do I believe for a good reason? What is a good reason? And what is reality really? And a unividual is somebody who's done that, who has started that process, who's come in, and the individuation happens through that too. Which is the foundation. Why we're much more individuals now is because people are willing to think for themselves. Not much. I'm very critical. I have to, I am, because it drives me nuts that there's so little of that awakening, but it's much more than it was. And if we can carry that on, then this other thing can open up. So what I wanted to do was say, okay, here's an aspiration. Here is what I think there is a new human being arising, which is a unividual. The philosophy which I've been articulating is an attempt to explain and support that. To go, look, we're in an evolutionary process, and here's a way we can understand it. Here's the way that I can understand it in the most elegant way, the simplest, least cluttered way of getting what this is. And then there's also, but it's not just about, understanding. There's also then how can we change how we experience this? And that's the deeper weight practices which I've been exploring with you. And there's those you can do on your own. And let me just tell you, because you probably don't know this, but for those of you that are interested, I've just recorded my first ever CD with the Hemisync people of the individual and the connection exercises through listening and through looking. And they're available now. I don't think they're very much. You can get them from, probably best to get it from them. But there's, check it out. And the Hemisync. There'll be something on the newsletter if it hasn't come out yet. Because then you can actually see and use these things. And the Hemisync is this great technology which messes with your brain and does interesting stuff and gets you into a nice space. So what I'm saying is, look, there's these techniques, and the fundamental technique is connection. And what I want to get across with us, and then what I want to enlist what I want the ICU to be, is something where we can support each other, but also where we can actually take this out and go, look, there's something interesting here. Because the techniques these deeper weight techniques, like the ideas, are essentially really simple and elegant. They're about seeing what you are. We're going to do that in a minute. And then they're seeing each other. They're actually looking through. And we're doing it all the time. You can do it now where you see me or when you listen to me. If you've done this with me before, you can look and listen on one level where it's like, oh, there's Tim, he's talking his ideas. And then you can reach through and get, oh my God, there's Tim. There's Tim. There's this guy who's nearly 60 years old, almost very soon. And he's been on this journey of life, and he's all battered and bruised, and there's bits of him which are really, this and that. Of course there are. And, and he's been touched by something which has obviously moved him and set him off on this mad course. You can have a sense of the soul that's here. And just, connecting with that other journey. And then that will put you in touch with your journey, that you're like that. And then right back, you can go, whoa, there's the whole universe arising as Tim there. Meeting the whole universe arising as you. What's that like? And that's something which is so simple and so elegant, and yet incredibly powerful. Whether you're doing it through listening or looking or anything. Just that simple thing. And on the philosophy side as well, fundamentally, I think what I've articulated, and there's much more to come, guys. I mean, every time I'm working on it, it's getting clearer and clearer. And by that, I mean, I think I can say it quicker and more directly. But I think the essential idea is so simple. The essential idea which underlies everything I want to share with individualism is, what is this that we're in? This is the realization of potentiality. That's what it is, on ever more emergent levels. Then there's a huge amount to say about what that means, and maybe we'll do a bit of that later, or maybe that'll be next time. But just essentially, let me just say that for now. This is and look, just look in front of you. Just look at your experience. It is doing it right now. It is constantly realizing a new potentiality. Constantly. Every moment builds on the past and realizes something that has never, ever, ever happened before. Because that's what this is. What's happened now is we understand, oh, that's not a trivial thing. That's the nature of existence, because it's been going on for 13.8 billion years. And it's moved in that time from hydrogen into all of us. That's incredible. That's what it's been doing. And it's reached us. And then it's reached us experiencing soul, experiencing psyche, the imagination, and thinking these amazing ideas. That's, that's it. That's the vision. And then filling it out with all of the stuff which can help us understand all of the the questions, the deep questions. You know, what is the soul? Could it possibly exist after death? Is that something significant? I think it is. Why is it that life seems so magical sometimes? Why can it be so matter of fact, and then other times just so magic, like a dream? That's a reality. Why is that a reality? And many other questions. Does it have a purpose? Yes. Well, a purpose, I've already said. Look, this is the realization on ever more emergent levels. So that's the purpose. The purpose is not something that life has. It's something that life is. Life is the realization of potentiality on ever more emergent levels. So what should we do? Well, we should realize our potentiality on ever more emergent levels. And why have I gathered you all together for this meeting of the ICU, to launch this new thing? Because I want us to realize potentiality on more emergent levels. And I think of course we can only do it together.